Welcome to 28.5, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and support and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode. Hello again. Welcome to episode 13 of 28.5 Women's Basketball. What's up, Sid?
What's up, Becca, fellow co-host? Excited for today's episode.
Always. We got some good content here. So the first, second, and third quarter, we're all going to dig into some of the games. We'll get into those specifics later. Fourth quarter, we got a bit of an upset we're going to report on. And then, of course, our overtime, we're going to sprinkle in some in the news, some good, some bad, and then some upcoming games. So let's get rolling. Sid, you ready?
Yeah, first quarter. Let's kick it off. We're going to start with the Michigan State versus Iowa game. Heading into this one, when you look at Michigan State, they were coming into this one undefeated, best start to program history, and they're now ranked 17th. So when we talk a lot about the Big Ten, there are a ton of schools right now in the Big Ten. They're in that top 25. This is a tough matchup for both teams when you look across the board, and we are in that Big Ten conference play, which is super fun. I think we're going to start seeing more upsets, more teams have to get creative in certain situations. And in this case, I thought both teams really tried to stick to their game plan, and Michigan State ended up winning in the final possession there, basically. So Michigan State wins this one 68-66. But coming into this one, I mentioned Michigan State was undefeated. From a personnel standpoint, Julia Arott comes in averaging 16.4 points per game and 8.5 rebounds per game. It was the first time I had watched Michigan State, and really I was impressed with her. I think she's their steady Eddie. She really brings a lot of depth for Michigan State. I thought she was fun to watch. So I'm excited to watch her throughout conference play, because obviously Michigan State, if they continue to win, they're going to be getting a lot more hype here, and we're going to be watching a lot of their games. Iowa heading into this one, if we remember this game last year, heading into this one, I'm thinking to myself, ooh, let's remember when Caitlin Clark hit that buzzer beater against Michigan State.
Yeah.
That was such a good game last year, and Caitlin Clark was doing what Caitlin Clark does, certainly in that one. That one was a headliner game. And in this case, it kind of was too. I mean, it's a big matchup in the Big Ten, and as I mentioned, we're just getting rolling with Big Ten play. When I look at Iowa, and we've talked quite a bit about Iowa lately, Hannah Stolke, Lucy Olson, Sydney Falter, Addison O'Grady, throw Kylie Feuerbach in there. She's a great shooter. Like, their starting five is solid. I think what's missing a little bit for Iowa is some of that consistency.
Yep.
So when I look at that starting five, are they consistently bringing what they need to bring to win games, especially down the stretch, especially in conference play as things heat up here? So heading in, I'm kind of keeping that in my radar, because I think we've seen some inconsistencies there. Overall for this game, though, like I said, they came in and tried to stick to their game plans. Michigan State, you see a lot of that 2-2-1 press. I thought they did a really good job with that. It really showed in how much Iowa turned the ball over again. I think they're struggling with some of this full court pressure. With Tennessee, when I watched that game, I think a lot of teams would have struggled with the Tennessee pressure that they brought. Tennessee was on that night when they played Iowa, and they really brought some defensive pressure that most teams would have struggled with. But when I looked at Michigan State's press and pressure, Iowa should have been able to handle that. They're going to struggle against Ohio State. Ohio State likes to throw a lot of full court pressure out there. They're going to struggle against Michigan this year. I think Iowa is. I mean, there's some teams within the Big Ten. They're going to struggle against Maryland. If they can't take care of the ball, they're going to be in some trouble, I think, this year in the Big Ten. So it's going to be interesting to see how they keep working on that. They've got to fix that. It was a huge factor in the game. Iowa turns the ball over 23 times. So it's not the 30 that we saw against Tennessee, but 23 is a lot when you only lose the game by 2. Because now you're starting to think about possession control. And we talked about this at our AAU tryouts last week, right? With the girls who are turning the ball over in the 3-man weave with no defense. Like, you have to take care of the basketball and everything you do. And to see Iowa come out there and have 23 turnovers, and you look down the stat line at who was causing some of these turnovers, and you've got Kylie with 5, Lucy Olson with 7. I mean, there's like some big players who were playing big minutes, who shouldn't be turning the ball over that much. Granted, the ball's in their hands, but again, back to the possession control. You turn the ball over that amount of times, you're limiting your opportunity to score on the offensive end, certainly, but you're also giving more possessions back to that other team. So when it's a tight game like that, and maybe you're not shooting as well as you want to, maybe you're not rebounding as well as you want to, those turnovers really matter. And I think they really mattered in this one. That was one of the big things to me walking out of this game. And if you look at the field goals, Iowa was 19 for 52, so they shoot 36% from the field. Michigan State shoots nearly 40% from the field, and they shoot 58 times. So an extra 6 shots, those are those couple extra points that Iowa needed and ended up losing by. So you can really like look at some of this and dissect it just by looking at the box score. You don't even need to watch this game. I think you pull up the box score and you're like, hey, here's kind of what happened in this one. And it's definitely what transpired. And then from a rebound perspective, Iowa wins this one on the glass, right? So they were able to balance it a little bit that way. I think it only magnifies how much of a problem their turnovers are. And when you're playing against decent teams and good teams like Michigan State right now, you've got to take care of the ball. So that's going to be something I think we're going to continue to watch with Iowa to make sure that they're picking some of that up. But I mentioned it. They've got this arsenal of shooters. They've got this arsenal of scorers. If one more player was clicking on all cylinders, I thought Stolke had a good game. She has 18 points. She's their more steady Eddie. But Lucy Olsen needed to step up, didn't step up to me. Like she was capable of being much more of a scorer in that game. She only had 13 points. Right? She was one of the top leading scorers in the nation last year. You just need to see more out of her, especially in Big Ten play. So a little disappointed there. Sydney Folter only has 4 points. I mean, she's very up and down right now. We saw her have a huge game against Iowa State. She comes out flat against Michigan State here. Kylie Fairbach had 12 points. She had 4 3-pointers, which kept them in it. I mean, so there's just ways to look at Iowa, and they're fun to watch right now because you're seeing them come out of a season where they made it to the national championship. They had Caitlin Clark, Kate Martin, they had Gabby, they had all these players that were so good, and they're trying to reload and they're capable of it. I just think they need to pick it up. And then Michigan State, to me, was the first time I had watched them play. Do I think that they are a Sweet 16 team right now? I don't. I'm just going to be honest. Yeah. I wasn't overly impressed with Michigan State. I just think they were disciplined. I think they took care of the ball for the most part. They had 14 turnovers, not too terrible. They had players that stepped up and made plays. So talking about Julie Arott, she comes in. She has 19 points for them and really played some solid minutes. You've got Grace Van Sluten, played solid minutes for them. So I don't know. I think we're going to have to watch more of Michigan State. I'm not really sold on what they're bringing. Having watched some big-time basketball so far, I mean, we've watched South Carolina countless times. We've watched UConn countless times, Notre Dame, USC, some of these big caliber programs right now. I don't think Iowa and Michigan State are stacking up. It's still relatively early. We've got all conference play to go. But there's some things that they're going to have to fine-tune if they're going to want to make a deep tournament run for both these teams. Oh, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. It's a second tier, right? It's definitely 2 tiers of type of style of play and caliber, right? So you have the USCs, the UConns, the South Carolinas, ND, who, right, they've been in the top 10 and kind of had their losses, or a couple of them here and there have had them. I'm talking about Notre Dame, but now they're back in the top 3 because they're winning those big time games. This type of game for me was, I mean, it was a good game for Iowa and Michigan State, but like the hype that Iowa had last year, it's just so different, right? Like you're trying to grasp it. And when you see this team, that the weird part to me is when you see this team, it's almost like, again, we've talked about this. Lucy and Caitlin Clark are not the same player, but they tend to play the same way. So when I see her in, I think, oh man, this is like same old style Iowa. When I see Hannah at the 5 and Addison O'Grady 4-5, I see the same style, but you're missing those role key players that just do their job every time. Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall, right? Big time players who hit shots, helped with ball pressure, didn't turn it over. And when you mentioned their 23 turnovers, Michigan State had 14 points off of their turnover, right? So like that's a difference in a 2-point game, 14 points on turnovers, and they shot the ball 6 more times. I'm shocked it's not more than that. You know what I mean? I'm
Absolutely.
shocked.
Yep.
The difference in that was only 6. So for me, I really think Iowa just needs another guard to step up. I like Hannah Stuelke back at the 5. I think it makes them faster, more nimble. Addison O'Grady's going in there, getting her minutes. She's playing about half the game right now. And I know it's a different style for Iowa when she's in the game. She's definitely not like the Megan Gustafson and how they used to play with a solid post player, right? Hannah is more like on the fly. Addison is a solid post player. So when she's in, I feel like it slows them down on the offense and defensive end. I just think they're trying to get a style around the game when she is in. Because, I mean, she only took 3 shots, 1 for 3 in 20 minutes. So the points are coming from elsewhere because the flow of the game is so much faster, whether it's turnovers and transition, quick threes, pull-ups. It's just a body that needs to kind of be fed more and also score more, right? We want her to get the ball inside, score those easy buckets. And I think Hannah Stuelke just brings a different level of versatility there.
Imagine Stuelke, even if she's playing more of the stretch 4, but she's solidly in the post again. And then you get Lucy Olson consistently going. Like Lucy Olson to me needed to take over that game and was capable of taking over the Michigan State game down the stretch and didn't. Yeah. Like I didn't see the fire in her eye. I didn't see like she was. I mean, she's forcing a few shots and stuff, but she's, to your point, she's just not Caitlin Clark, right? Like, yeah. But she needs to step up and be that scorer.
Who did the ball go to at the end of the game for a bucket? It went to Lucy Olson. So even though she only had 13 and was turning the ball over, her level of play and the confidence that the team has in her is hit that bucket. You are a gamer. Like, come play this game. Definitely just an off night and kind of out of character for her as well. So, it happens, especially in those lull games, right? Michigan State, it's kind of like we should win, but they're ranked better than us, but they're undefeated, right? There's just so many variables, and you don't really know a team until you play them, and then they can take a hit to the face, right? Like Minnesota did that to us in the Sweet 16 or the first round of the tournament when we hosted. It was just a different level, and they came out guns hot. So good for Michigan State.
Yeah, it's a great win. I mean, heading into this one, I'm thinking, oh yeah, Michigan State's undefeated, but they haven't really played top caliber teams we've been talking about. So honestly, I walk away from that one. I think Iowa's the better team overall. I just think, like we mentioned, they need to figure out some scorers that are going to step up, like Lucy Olson consistently. All right, let's jump into quarter 2. Becca, what do you got for us?
Yeah, Sid. So let's jump into our second quarter where we're going to highlight UConn's dominance versus Iowa State. You know those type of games that you just feel like you're having an out-of-body experience and you have it, then your teammate gets it, and then your other teammate gets it, and it just seems like everything's clicking for you in every possible way. Yeah, that's kind of what this game was like. UConn had a 3-point party for pretty much the whole game. There's no really good way to say it other than the fact that Ashlyn Shade, who is a Hoosier girl, she's from the state of Indiana. They played Notre Dame the game before this, and they lost, and she didn't really play much. She didn't really play at all. Didn't have a great game, right? And that's her homecoming game. You're always excited for it. You want to play well. You got all your fam and friends there probably, I'm assuming. I don't know. This girl went off. She was 6 for 6 from the 3-point line in the first quarter. 6 for 6 from the 3, 100% from 3. And it wasn't like wide open. Some of them were just pulling it from right behind the screen, not even coming off the screen. Just she's feeling it, out of body experience, shoot it, take it, roll. Okay. She starts it. Paige Beckers goes 3 for 3 from the 3-point line in the first quarter. And let's just keep it going. Let's share the wealth. Sarah Strong, the post player, goes 1 for 2 from 3. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Sid, the first quarter, they were 10 for 11 from the 3-point line. What do you say? What do you say? What do you do? You're Iowa State. They're sitting in the zone, but like you have a team that's shooting lights out. Literally, I'm flipping a light switch from 3. Get out of the zone. Get out of the zone.
I was, my husband and I were watching it, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, yo, they need to get out of this zone now. And that was like halfway through the first quarter. There's a timeout called, and I look at my husband, and I'm like, dude, they're still in the zone. And then you have the commentator who's trying to like explain, well, with Audie Crooks, they don't want an
Yeah.
extender and they're going to
Yeah.
run high screens up
Agree.
there and she's
Agree.
going to get in foul
Agree.
trouble. And I'm like, yeah, but stick her in the middle
Yeah.
of the paint
Yeah.
and have everyone else extend out there and guard people because UConn is just raining them, to your point. I mean,
Yeah. It was rough to even watch because you know how we talked about the Iowa Michigan State game was a different level. This is where you really saw the different level of play from a top tier team playing a second to third tier team because UConn's just IQ based, super smart, spread the floor. They had the 4 out, 1 in, running a person baseline, just absolutely obliterated Iowa State, right? And it was so I felt bad for Iowa State. I wish Coach Bill would have come up with some sort of junk amoeba defense, something else, a triangle and two, something, because
anything
this
else.
was nuts. This was nuts. Really, honestly, tough to watch and kind of like, is this real life? I think a lot of people thought that and asked that question as well. Don't get me wrong. UConn had to make those shots. They weren't making them against Notre Dame the game before. So obviously they got to work, they got on the shooting gun, got reps in, got it right. But this was just a tough game to watch. I mean, Audie Crooks, when she got it inside, she scored. Emily Ryan, the assist queen, she got in foul trouble, right? Got 3 fouls with 5 minutes left to go in the second. So she had timeout. That's a ball handler. That's somebody that you're looking to push the ball, get the ball to Audie, make good plays. I'm being 1,000%. I don't even know what to say other than this was a 3-point party for UConn because then they started the second half. Paige Beckers hit another 3. Then Iowa they tried to go man, and that's where they kind of still just lost all momentum. I mean, Iowa State did have their own 11-0 run. They did in the second quarter, the end of the second quarter. And why do you think that is, Sid? Because Sid Harris goes 3 for 3 from 3. Like, I've never in my life seen a game that it's like you are more accurate from the 3-point line than the free throw line.
Yeah, it's insane.
This was
It's funny.
crazy. At halftime, UConn was winning 54-35. Ashlyn Shade had 20, Paige Beckers had 18, and Sarah Strong had 12. Don't get me wrong, right? Audie Crooks had her 11. Sid Harris had 9 points from the 3 for 3. But yeah, as a team, the first half, UConn was 12 of 20. The first half.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
you've made 12. Do the math. It's a lot of points. Yuck, right? The final for this one was 101-68. Crooks finished with 22 and 6. Harris, who came off the bench, who we mentioned, the 9 points, had 17. Addie Brown, our other sophomore stud who normally shows up, right, has big games of her own, had 9 points, 5 boards, and 6 assists. So not a terrible stat line, just not enough against UConn. And the assist queen shows up, right? 9 points, 6 assists, but Sarah Strong for UConn, 29 points, 9 boards. Ashlyn Shade, 27 points, 7 of 10 from the 3. Beckers, 27 points, 5 of 7 from 3. This was a 3-point shootout, and I think there should have been a competition. The largest lead UConn had was 37 at one point in the game. So UConn came, they saw, and they freaking conquered.
Yeah,
All in all,
it's
this was the
perfect.
Hall of Fame Women's Showcase, and they showed out.
Yeah, I was having flashbacks to the Thanksgiving holiday when Iowa State got blown out by South Carolina. You remember that game where I'm
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
yes, it was over like before the game even started almost. And halfway through the first quarter here, I was like, wow, this is looking all too
Mm-hmm.
familiar for Iowa State. Like they're just not hanging with these top caliber teams.
Yeah.
And granted, UConn was on fire, but still.
UConn was insane. I think they were drinking Mike's secret stuff from like Space Jam, but also like how much does that just suck for Iowa State, right? You
Yeah.
got to keep playing. The game has been over in the first quarter. It was, right? It was. You still have to come in, you have to fight, you have to grit it out, you have to try to make it dead. Iowa State's coach was saying, look, like that couldn't have been worse. If they would have went 100% from the 3 instead of 90 in the first half, that would have been worse. But at this point, I give them props for fighting back, going on their own runs. It was a mess. It was ridiculous. They shot lights out. Game over.
Yeah, I can't do basic math here, but they were down by 26 at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
Iowa State. You're not coming back against UConn
No.
like it. Yep. And I'm sitting here like halfway through the first, exiting the first. I'm like, oh, are they going to try to go after Tennessee's record they just set? Because Tennessee had that game where they had 30 made three-pointers.
Insane.
Absolutely insane. So it's been the theme of the week is like, let's drain the three ball.
Yeah. You get a 3. You get a 3. Everybody gets a 3.
Yeah. Sarah Strong makes 5 3-pointers as your post player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's in her game. That's kind of been something that they wanted as a stretch 5, like a stretch 5. Imagine that. And she's a freshman coming in, putting up big numbers and competing. And not only that, but showing that versatility in her game. Just when you think she's all post player inside, she's going to take you on a drive from the free throw line. Then when you overplay her at the free throw line and she's out on the 3, just passing the ball around and she's wide open because you're laying off, she's going to pull it. Versatility is literally free money in college. The more you can get on the court, help support the team in any way, the better. And she's absolutely doing it. So that's my second quarter, Sid. We should have done that game for the third quarter and just had it all in the threes. That would have been good.
There you go. The last thing that I want to say about this one is maybe UConn comes into this game with a little chip on their shoulder because you've been hearing a lot about them. And now that AZ Fudd's out again, everyone's saying, oh, UConn doesn't have enough players stepping up and scoring. Mm-hmm. And I think some of them took it personally.
Well, and then even Gino said that, right? So
yep,
Gino said that, and it was her homecoming game where she didn't have the best and didn't really play. So I don't doubt. I mean, and she was smiling the whole time. She was having a ball. She's probably having an out-of-body experience, honestly. When you're just that hot and anything you throw up, there's no heat check anymore. It's money.
Absolutely. Oh, good old UConn. Steamrolling past Iowa State there. Let's jump into the third one, quarter number 3. All right, so I'll take this one, lead this one, the Oklahoma versus Michigan game. And it was a closer game than the scoreboard here. Oklahoma wins 72-62 against Michigan. And it was tight pretty much throughout the game. It was tied at halftime, 30-30. Both teams come in at 9-1, so 9 wins and only 1 loss on the season. This is a part of the Jumpman Invitational, so it's kind of cool to see the Jordan Brand schools coming together each year and playing in this. Oklahoma ranked 10th. They average 23.4 assists per game, which is the number 1 in Division I right now. So think about that, 23.4 assists per game they're averaging. I mean, this team is efficient. They average 92.6 points per game, which is ranked 4th in D1. Their field goal percentage average is 50%, which is ranked 6th in D1. Like, Oklahoma's for real. They're coming in and they're playing some high caliber games here. The main contributors for them, Peyton Verhulst, she averages 14 points per game. Skylar Vann, she's the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year from last year, and she's their 3rd leading scorer. So it just shows you some of the depth that Oklahoma brings, and we've highlighted them before, but it's kind of fun to see where they're at after a few more games. And the big one is Reagan Beers. She is their big post player down low, and she's absolutely fun to watch. She averages 17.7 points per game coming in, and they really run a lot of their offense through her, and she's capable of dropping 30 if she needs to. So she's one of those big-time scorers out there and big players for Oklahoma. On the season, when I look at it for Michigan, they're ranked 20th. They lost the one game heading into this one that they had lost was against South Carolina to start the season. So we had watched Michigan. We had highlighted Michigan, how excited we were to watch them in Big Ten play this year. And they've got freshmen galore who are really good for Michigan. Like, if these freshmen stay and continue to develop at U of M, Michigan's going to be really good coming up here, I think, in the next few years, especially if they're able to reload behind them. It's going to be interesting to see if they are able to keep them with this NIL world, and if one of these big top-tier programs doesn't try and sweep some of these girls up. So Silas Swords, she averages 17 points per game. She's shooting 37% from threes. She's also shooting 91% from the free throw line.
No, that's UConn's 3-point field goal percentage, though.
That's UConn
awesome.
when they're hot.
Yeah, that's
from behind the 3.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, right? You're a freshman coming in
Absolutely.
and you're knocking down free throws and averaging 17 points per game. Then there's another freshman, Olivia Olson. She's a 5-star recruit for them. She's averaging 16.1 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game. Her mid-range game is fun to watch. She's a versatile scorer for sure. Jordan Hobbs, she's a senior for them. She brings more of that leadership and stability. And then the other freshman I wanted to highlight is Mila Holloway. She's a solid point guard. For being a freshman and handling a lot of the pressure that's thrown at her, she sees the floor really well. She distributes the ball really well. She's just like a good OG point guard to me. So I think she's fun to watch. Also a freshman. So those 3 freshmen that I highlighted, I just think are solid for Michigan. And overall in this game, when we look at the Michigan versus Oklahoma game, both teams really play a similar style where they're looking to get out and push tempo, yet it's very calculated. There's some good IQ out there when you're watching some of these players. They take care of the ball for the most part. Oklahoma, I will say, had the upper hand in the first quarter. They won the first quarter 20-13, but Michigan really bounced back in the second quarter, and that was driven by Beers getting in foul trouble. Gets taken out of the game. U of M went on a 7-0 run instantly with Beers getting taken out there, and Oklahoma didn't score for a solid 6 minutes in the second quarter. So you see Michigan maybe not hanging a ton in the first quarter, but then that happens in the second quarter, and it shows how much Reagan Beers is that glue for Oklahoma. And so Michigan's able to hang with them in the second quarter there. In the first half, like I said, they're tied at halftime 30-30. So pretty good game so far at this point. Some of the stats here. So Silas Swords, she only had 2 points at halftime. So somebody that's averaging over 17 points per game for Michigan, only having 2 at halftime, I think that was kind of an indicator on how maybe the rest of the game was going to go. She struggled from scoring, never really got anything going. I just really think Oklahoma did a good job defending her too. Right? Mm-hmm. She was continuing to try to score and to get points on the board, but just never really got anything flowing. And then Reagan Beers only had 1 point at half because of that foul trouble that she got into. So I thought that was a big thing for Oklahoma. Second half, Michigan started the third quarter on a 7-0 run. And then Oklahoma went on a run after that and outscored Michigan 20-17 in the third. It was a 3-point game entering the fourth quarter. It was, like I said, really close until that fourth quarter. And then Oklahoma really ran away with it. With about 7 minutes and 30 seconds to go in the game, there was a big 3-pointer that Oklahoma scored. They go up 59-51. And then it was pretty much over at this point. Silas Swords and Olivia Olson never really get going. You shut those 2 down for Michigan, and they're going to struggle to score. Turnovers for Michigan, though, were a really big factor in this game. They had 26 turnovers. Kudos to Oklahoma and the defense that they bring. So we talked about their high-octane offense, averaging over 90 points per game and leading the country in assists, but I thought that their defense was really solid against Michigan. They forced Michigan to have a lot of turnovers, like I said, 26 of them. And then rebounds for Oklahoma, another huge factor. Oklahoma out-rebounds Michigan 44-37. When you look at those 2 things, little old school basketball there, it's hard to win games when you're getting out-rebounded by that much and you have that many turnovers. So not really the sexiest game to watch that we've seen all year. I thought it was solid basketball for the 40 minutes. But again, we're talking about some of those top tier teams and what they're capable of doing. And to me, Oklahoma is a good team. Don't get me wrong. I think they're going to really have a strong conference season in the SEC, especially their first year coming in. But still not maybe one of those top tier teams. So let's talk about that for a second. I think it's really interesting. Who are those top tier teams? And you and I have watched a lot of women's basketball to date. So I feel like our opinions are probably merited a little bit right now. Yeah. So Notre Dame's up there. UConn's up there. Let's throw USC up there.
South Carolina's
up there. UCLA's up there. Yep.
Texas is up there.
I mean, they take Notre Dame to OT at Notre Dame. Yeah, I mean, that's a solid game for them. Even though they lose it, that's like solid what they were able to do. Good body of work in those 40 plus minutes. We'll say 40 minutes because overtime wasn't very good for them.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a couple teams that we've watched. Everyone's giving me a lot of crap for picking Maryland, but I think they're capable. Like if Brenda Freese puts that game plan together, I think they could shut some teams down. They're not of that caliber yet, but they could be. But those teams we highlighted, I think are just playing a different tier of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it used to be that there were only a couple teams.
Like
Right?
UConn, Tennessee.
Yeah, like way
Yeah.
back in the day when
Yeah.
and then there started to be like a Notre Dame would win a national championship in 2001 and then you saw Louisville have a little bit of a
Yeah.
run and what they were able to do make some Final Four, Stanford in and out.
You know who also won some national championships and made a run?
Who's
Yeah.
that?
Maryland.
Maryland, there you go.
Give them
Okay.
their props.
Okay.
I'm with
like
you,
big
Sid. I
on Maryland this
gotcha.
year. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So watching some of those games, not that we don't want to watch them, I think they're still fun to watch. There's still players that are coming out there and doing their thing. It's just interesting to see that drop off a little bit. And I hope that certainly as our game has evolved, we're seeing more teams in what we just rattled off than just one or two. But I want to see even more parity. Yeah. That's what the men's game is bringing. Certainly more than us. Like we don't have those Cinderella stories usually that make the Final Four, which is part of why I'm rooting for Maryland a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's fun for the game. It's exciting for the game when you've got other teams that can show up, show out, and win against top 5 opponents. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think Duke is in that caliber right now. They're way too inconsistent. So it's and
you know one school we haven't really highlighted a lot, and they're ranked in the top 5. They're 5 is LSU. And it's not that we don't want to give LSU their credit or their kudos, right? It's just they're also undefeated, but they haven't played. They played NC State, who's also been up and down this year, and that's just a start, right? So once season kicks off and this really gets rolling, it's going to be interesting to see the grind. I mean, don't get me wrong, LSU undefeated, but they played Murray, Troy. I mean, they did play Stanford, went in overtime and won. That was probably their biggest win, and Stanford currently isn't even ranked. So it's interesting to see, and I think that even kind of shocked Coach Mulkey that they got that win, and it was from a freshman coming in. So again, not saying they can't be a top tier program. I just think right now it's your body of work and the strength of schedule. Let's go football wise, right? Like, what's your strength of schedule? Who have you played? Where are you at ranking wise? And that's what they go off of, right? So I think it'll just be interesting to see once conference play kicks off, the grind that conference is with the travel, the twice a week, the road game, home game, stuff like that. I think it will be very telling.
I think conference play is the next big body of work here that, to your point, is going to tell us a lot. We've seen like the first portion of season, and this is kind of where we're assessing everyone. We're going to come out of conference play, heading into those conference tournaments, and there's going to be some other teams that were like, oh, look at this team. Which is going to be a ton of fun. I'm hoping that another big team emerges a little bit out of the ACC, and I'm going to turn the fourth quarter over to you because I think there's one out there that we want to highlight.
You know what? This was an ACC opener for Georgia Tech and versus UNC. And this was an upset, Sid. Georgia Tech, being ranked 25, went to UNC, who's 14, and beat them 82-76. I mean, that is the type of upset conference play we're expecting. And don't get me wrong, that's the ACC opener for them. They're going to have to play them again, and I'm sure it's going to be a whole different ball game there. But this is Georgia Tech's first time on the road that they beat UNC since 2012. So good for them. You and I were talking about this just before. Georgia Tech has a legendary coach. I know you're probably going to mention here in a bit. But, they have freshman players stepping up. Tony Morgan had 23 points from them. Very, very efficient, 8 for 12 from the floor. Freshman Danny Carney, 22 points, 9 rebounds. And Georgia Tech outscored UNC in 3 of the 4 quarters. So they were constantly competing and matching with UNC at UNC. I mean, that's a intense environment. That's a ranked team, right? A UNC who I think at times has the capability to break into the top 10, right? You don't know based on their schedule and who they're playing. But the interesting part with this game is UNC outscored Georgia Tech in the fourth quarter, 31-16. But Georgia Tech was able to hold on and win by 6. Think about that lead. To be Georgia Tech, to get that lead at UNC, I know I've said that a lot, but that's a big time environment. And then to just kind of hold on while getting outscored by 15, 16 points, like in the fourth quarter alone, you did the work the first three, and I think that's what's important. Also want to highlight UNC Maria Gadang, 21 points, 9 of 11 from the field, super efficient. Navarre, 16 points, 6 of 12, 50% from the field, where I think they're really struggling. And I think this player is a little inconsistent right now. We talked about Lucy Olson kind of having the same vibe. Utsby. Utsby struggled this game. She's known, I mean, she made her name for herself last year, especially in the tournament run, had some big games. So she only had 2 points. Again, I mean, against a Georgia Tech, you would think and assume, but I know they probably had a great scout on her, right? They were all over her, and I know you're going to highlight that, coach, but I mean, this alone, if Utsby's only scoring 2 points, you know they were sending multiple people on her, giving her ball pressure galore the whole game. Couple more pieces just want to add here. Georgia Tech out rebounded UNC 41-24, but Georgia Tech had 17 turnovers where UNC had 8. So UNC takes great care of the ball, probably under pressure, but just not able to make those shots. And I think they're really missing some offense from their guards. And I think it's just crazy that the largest lead that Georgia Tech had was 23. I mean, talk about just a great upset. That is huge for Georgia Tech. They're 11-0, and they keep rolling.
I think it's great for the ACC overall. It's another potential good team in that conference. It just makes the ACC stronger. Talking about Georgia Tech and their coach, so they have Nell Fortner, who's just a staple in women's basketball. She's done so much in the coaching realm. She was at Auburn when I was at Tennessee, and I just remember the level of respect that Pat had for her. And she would give some of the background, and they were good friends. And I think it's great to see her at Georgia Tech. She's really elevating the game there. So that's really cool to see. But she's just, her resume speaks for herself. Was a coach for USA basketball. She coached at Purdue. She coached the Indiana Fever. She coached at Auburn. Now she's coaching at Georgia Tech. She was the Indiana Fever GM also from 1999 to 2003. So this woman's she's been around the game. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she just has that presence. Like, I remember we would be playing Auburn, and like I said, the level of respect that Pat had for her and vice versa was just super cool to be around that. Super cool to be around two powerhouse women who have done so much for women's basketball. And shout out to Nell, who's getting it done right now at Georgia Tech. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's great to see Georgia Tech kind of get back on the map. Kind of been long overdue, just shaking it up a bit and having them make a name for themselves for sure. All right, so let's do a quick overtime. We have some in the news, which we're going to touch on super quick. Highlights, we're going to have some of our stars, right? So Caitlin Clark, obviously we all know her, love her. She is getting her number 22 jersey retired. Iowa's going to retire it on February 2nd, the same day that they face USC. So that's going to be a tough game without a doubt. Clark will be in attendance, and she just said she's forever proud to be a Hawkeye. So great, exciting stuff. Awesome to see her rightfully in the rafters.
That's great for her, and they're doing it so quickly. I mean, she just left last season, so rightfully so, they should be retiring 22, and it's going to be forever hard to match what Caitlin Clark did at Iowa, and not only at Iowa, but for the women's game in general. I mean, we root for the Juju Watkins, the Paige Beckers, all these freshmen and sophomores that are coming up, and certainly the players in high school right now that we don't even know about that are going to try to go after what Caitlin Clark did. But look out, because that's going to be really difficult to do. I mean, she just was that good and that much fun to watch. So shout out Caitlin Clark. That's awesome.
In not so awesome news, a 40-year-old man was arrested for stalking UConn's Paige Beckers. He did plead guilty Wednesday to a second-degree charge, but how terrifying, right? Like, Paige is one of the go-tos. And imagine, this probably happens everywhere. You know what I mean? Imagine all the stars at these schools, and now there's money involved, and they're on commercials, and they just become they're a celebrity that you can go to a game and get an autograph, right? There's more accessibility to them because they're still college student athletes. So I think it's just kind of terrifying that this happens. I know that obviously when Skylar and I play together. This was happening to some degree with her, and the school did a great job of, things that were sent in, fans send in mail and all types of stuff. They would go through it, double, triple check everything. And then she had security that went on road games with us and stuff. And that became a staple. So I don't doubt UConn has something similar. And that's why it was so quickly taken action on and hopefully resolved. So he did receive a 1-year suspension and 3 years of game suspension and 3 years probation. Scary stuff. It sucks that this has to happen. I just wish people would still respect young women who are growing up, still trying to understand where they're at and where they're going in life, and kind of keep their distance. What do you think, Sid?
Yeah. A 1-year suspension from the games. Is that like, why ban him for life? Come on.
Yeah.
He was stalking one of the players. Like, he can't ever go to a UConn women's basketball game again. Like, you're banned from campus. That's where I'm at. Like, if you're making players, in this case Paige, feel uncomfortable because you're literally following around and stalking her, like,
I have an edit to this, y'all. I'm gonna edit it right here. So this individual is from Oregon. He's banned from the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
He's barred from the state of Connecticut during his 3-year probation.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Okay,
like,
that's way more serious. Yeah.
There you go.
Remove yourself from the state. Holy cow. Okay, wow.
Yeah. And you got to think about the pressure that Paige Beckers is under to perform in all these games. And there's a lot of games throughout the season. Then you have stuff like that you have to worry about, like your own safety. And it's not cool. So I'm sure UConn is doing a great job with security and helping her out there, but still scary for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. So a couple quick upcoming games that we also wanted to highlight. So tonight, Friday night, December 20th, Ohio State, ranked number 11, plays Stanford. We haven't talked hardly at all about Ohio State, but also a good caliber team in the Big Ten right now. I think this is a good matchup. Stanford not ranked, but we all know very capable team there. Also Friday night, tonight, UCLA plays Creighton. Creighton was in the top 25 to start the season. They've fallen off here a little bit, but again, a good caliber team, and they're going up against number 1 UCLA. Saturday is a huge one. So there's 2 games on Saturday I do want to highlight. The first one is Nebraska, who's ranked 23rd. They're 10-1 right now. They play Georgia Tech, right? Georgia Tech is now getting some highlights here for us because they've been playing so well. Georgia Tech ranked 17th. They play each other on Saturday. But the big one is USC versus UConn. Get the popcorn out. Get the popcorn out.
It's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to see this game. You and I chatted a bit. It is at UConn, right? They're playing at the XL Center, which is not on campus, but it's pretty much a large arena that is right downtown stores. So it's a home game with more people than their on-campus gym would be able to hold. So it's going to be rocking without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge game for USC. Like, they lose that game to Notre Dame earlier in the season. I think they need to try to really win this one, to me. Like, this is a big one for Juju. And it's that Juju versus Paige matchup.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be interesting to see how Kiki Iriafen does against Sarah Strong.
Yep.
Right. The matchups here in this one are the duos, right? Like, to me, with AZ Fudd being out, it's really Paige and Sarah who have kind of been the staples this year for UConn. And then obviously with USC, it's Juju and Kiki. And like, they both got to match up.
It's funny that each matchup, like you just mentioned, one is a vet and one's kind of still young in their career, right? Paige, a vet, Juju, young, sophomore, still young, Kiki, vet, and then Sarah Strong, freshman. So one from each side. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be awesome. Definitely looking forward to watching this one.
This one is probably going to earn itself a bonus drop on Monday. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think with that, we wrap up our 13th episode, Sid. Our first quarter, we hit on how Michigan State squeaked by on Iowa. Second quarter, we just confirmed UConn had a 3-point party on Iowa State. That third quarter, Oklahoma took care of business against Michigan. And our fourth quarter, we highlighted an upset, Georgia Tech, a 25, beating number 14 UNC. And then we had some good, bad, and upcoming games of our In the News overtime. So great to chat with y'all, and I hope you reach out to us on our social medias, and we'll chat with you later. See you, Sid.
See you, Beck. Talk to everyone soon. Thanks for listening.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow on your preferred podcast platforms to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.